Hey everyone, before we get started with the video, I wanted to say if you like the content I'm putting out for the channel, please feel free to subscribe and comment on what else you'd like to see on this channel going forward.
There you go. Balls. Come on, that's not your boyfriend. Go for it.
Oh, oh, bang, bang, it's a chitty bang, bang, stop it!
I'm a Jew. Not a good Jew.
For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil.
Haven't we given enough? Haven't we given the fans and the broadcasters enough? They've been milking our blood and sweat for years.
Have you guys lost your mind?
I'll do funny shit. I'll do some funny shit. They'll be happy. Who fucking cares?
They're not gonna be happy.
It's on an island. They don't give a fuck.
How much did this cost?
Hey, exactly. Guess what? Don't film this. Guess what? They have to pay for us to be here. That was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
Kenny vs. Spenny is a Canadian reality competition show starring Kenneth, Kenny, Joel Hotz, and Spencer, Spenny, Nolan Rice. The show revolves around them competing against one another in various jackass-like competitions. I feel like I could list some of them, but I think that would be boring, so I'll have them do it.
The competition this week is who can drink more beer. Competition this week is first one to stop dancing loses.
This is who can live in a van the longest competition.
Who can stand the longest.
We're gonna hit the streets and we're gonna try and piss off as many people as we can. And that is why I'm wearing the Trope Suck t-shirt.
First rule is very simple. First one to get a stain loses.
You lose.
Kenny!
You lost.
What? No!
So what's the purpose of these competitions? Well, the winner's allowed to humiliate the loser in any way they want, and it's really limitless. From them having to roll around in dog crap, to getting puked on, to wanking it in front of the loser's mom, there really is no low they aren't willing to go. And I mean, seeing Spenny get pelted with eggs is so satisfying.
Ow! Ah, that's it! Oh!
12 eggs. I can't even talk. That was so much fun.
You better not lose another one. I'm not gonna forget this. Look at me!
As you can probably tell, this show is pretty crude. The crudest. It's humor in its most base form. But there is a reason I want to talk about it. This show is actually cleverly written. It's a lot more than just fart jokes and gross humor, but really an interesting look into one man's journey to destroy a psychologically fragile man on television. You see, the series revolves around Kenny being an evil mastermind to win competitions. He plays the absurd force for the series, and Spenny plays the straight man. You know, the guy who responds to all the nonsense Kenny and the world throws at him. And Kenny does a lot of crap to Spenny, from destroying his room, pissing on his bed,
He pissed my bed!
having Spenny have continual oral sex with a trans man, having him covered in duct tape, having sex with his bed, spraying bleach in his mouth, and driving Spenny to almost commit suicide. These aren't even humiliations, by the way. They're just parts of an episode. You see, the humiliations aren't the reason you watch the show. I mean, they only take about 2 minutes of the entire runtime, and then it's over. The humiliations are only really great when in the right context. If Spenny wins, which does happen occasionally, you know, through something like divine intervention, we feel like he's truly earned the win. Other times, the humiliation just exists because Kenny cheated to win, and it's like, who cares? The best part of the show is really the dynamic relationship between the two main characters and how they build off one another. So why do I want to talk about it? Well, I've binge watched the series for fun and honestly had to make some kind of video. So the trope I'm talking about today is a nice addition to the last one I talked about in the previous video. In my last episode of A Noble Trope, I talked about black and white morality, which is akin to yin and yang, and used Samurai Jack as my show of focus. Today's trope is very, very similar, but instead of black and white, it's red and blue, or red Oni and blue Oni. And Kenny vs. Spenny is a perfect example of it, and how great this trope is for storytelling. And yes, there is a story for this reality show. Now, what is Red Oni and Blue Oni? Well, it's based on Japanese folklore. It revolves around two individuals that are intrinsically linked. The two can be opposing factions, rivals, siblings, co-workers, or
two best friends who battle against each other.
Two best friends, like in this series. The two will essentially be almost polar opposites of each other. Emphasis on almost again. One will be hot, one will be cold. One is an extrovert, the other introverted. One is abrasive, the other submissive. One can be ultimately good and the other evil, but the focus really is about the traits rather than morality. You've seen this trait used a lot, and sometimes they're even color-coded for you. Take Goku and Vegeta, Ichigo and Uryu, Naruto and Sasuke, Joey and Kaiba. I was gonna say Yugi and Kaiba, but the differences are more on the nose with Joey. You see, within all of these examples, and yes, they are anime, I am a weeb, they're all on the good alignment, but they are polar opposites in character traits, and because there's a contrast, it's dynamic. We get to understand and note all the differences between the characters and how it influences the other. Morality isn't really the key factor, and the similarities between the characters gets highlighted and elevated more because of the core differences. In the case of, say, Dragon Ball, Goku and Vegeta differ vastly on personalities. You know, the shorthand is one is a lovable idiot and the other is a strict authoritarian. They butt heads constantly because their motivations differ drastically, and it's also how they compose themselves. But in little moments, we see that they aren't so different. They both eat like monsters, are jerk-ass fathers, Vegeta's arguably better, and both are so prideful that it leads to their downfall. So let's reroute back to the show of focus. Kenny versus Spenny. The show has two main stars, Kenny and Spenny, and they differ drastically as characters. There's a lot of bad stuff you can say about Kenny. He's gross, immoral, enjoys torturing his friend, and is a genuine asshole. But as we see when the series continues, Kenny is incredibly funny, very sociable as we see him joke around, and he treats his crew very nicely. Women legitimately like being around him, and he actually tries to make the show interesting. Spenny, on the other hand, is the complete antithesis. He's clean-cut, virtuous, aims to play fairly, and wants to come off as a genuinely good person. But as we see, he's actually a self-righteous, pompous, egotistical idiot. He tries to play the straight man, but will eventually devolve into cheating. He gets easily aggravated and will punch Kenny in front of police officers. Nice going, idiot. Yells at his crew, will ditch his best friend for cash. He isn't able to take a joke, probably because he's autistic, and he will barely compete in any competition. Seriously, I'm not kidding there. In a competition show, Spenny barely competes. He would rather sit in a chair and do nothing for 3 days because that makes for interesting television, somehow.
Blood, it's a fucking blood sport, right? Blood sport! Blood sport! Spenny's down! Spenny's hurt! Spenny's down! Kenny wins! Kenny wins! Kenny wins! Kenny wins!
It's okay, man. It's okay, man. It's okay, man.
Well, crap. I guess I should have said more nice things about him. So whether it's the overt traits they use for each other or the covert traits they use when the other person's out of the room, they are diametrically opposed. Spenny likes to appear like the morally upstanding second banana. He always tries to give a PSA on whatever may seem relevant to the competition. For example, in the episode, Who Can Hold a Dump in Their Pants the Longest? Now, this show is very disgusting. Spenny wanted to talk about the serious problem that is IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. You've got to be shitting me. Another time was in the episode Who Can Stay Obese Longer? Spenny mentions that there's a stereotype that obese people are obsessed with food, and it's a terrible disease. Seriously, dude? Then how do they get obese then? How does a person become obese if they aren't obsessed with food? Are you an idiot? The answer is yes.
Are you guys on the payroll? What?
Kenny thought of it. He was smart.
Are you saying I'm stupid?
I'm not saying you're stupid.
He's meant to play the lovable idiot. Even in the same episode, the obese one, Kenny did the smart thing and buys weights he can easily strap along his body to evenly distribute the extra weight. Of course, he got these to cheat by taking the weights off and hiding them. But you know, even if he didn't do that, it's still smart on merit alone. Spenny, He created this godless monstrosity. What in God's name is that thing? He used like strings to hold up plates and mini dumbbells. This is so stupid. And this is one episode. He does this constantly. We have a trope name for people like Spenny. It's called the butt monkey, and I will make a video about that in the future. They are the Yamcha of the show. Their goal in life is for other people to kick them around. You know, as I was typing this, I had to take a step back, and really, I want to say something nice about Spenny. He goes into these competitions with honor. He aims to not stoop to Kenny's level. He will put honor before reason. God damn it. Like the time they had to survive on an island that had a resort that Kenny shacked up in, and Spenny spent his time outside trying to build some shelter like a peasant. Okay, I'm sorry. It's impossible. He's too much of an idiot. And that's why I love the show. There's so many times to just humiliate and make fun of Spenny that are outside of the ending humiliations.
You okay? Okay?
Yeah. Kenny told me to shoot everything.
Fuck Kenny! Don't shoot this! Are you out of your fucking mind? I'm under fucking unbelievable stress right now. Fuck off! It's just a semi.
And the show needs Spenny. Kenny's brand of humor doesn't work with other people. We actually had an episode where Spenny leaves, like he strained his balls trying to lift up a flashlight.
Ow, ow! Ow, my testicles have gone up inside! My testicles are inside! Fuck!
And Kenny tries to replace him. And it just shows the audience that he needs Spenny. Spenny has all the traits to make a great foil as the Blue Oni. Kenny doesn't try to hide his immaturity. He's a full-on extrovert and puts Spenny on full blast. Spenny reacts to it as this weird hybrid thing. He wants to be superior and above everything in this show. He wants to educate people through this show. It's a show where you crapped your pants. Sorry, I can't listen to a person who has shit in their diaper. As every episode goes by, this image of a morally just Spenny dissolves away, and you have a story of one man's descent into madness. But he doesn't really crack fully, so that's good. The Red Oni and Blue Oni trope works as a great balancing act of two forces, very similar to yin and yang. The devil is in the details again with this trope. It revolves around all the tiny, subtle differences, so when we see that they're similar, it really highlights it. What will generally happen in later seasons is Spenny will devolve into Kenny's overt personality by cheating when the pressure increases, and Kenny, his covert persona is actually quite virtuous, like Spenny's overt facade. In the episode Who's a Better Boxer, we see that Kenny cares for Spenny. He doesn't want to beat him up in a boxing ring, so he locks him in a closet so he can avoid fighting him entirely, but eventually surrenders and does his humiliation with honor. In the episode Who Has the Biggest Balls, a competition of who is tougher, we see that Kenny wins most of the challenges, but eventually drives Spenny to nearly commit suicide, which in reality is Spenny using emotional manipulation to win the competition, which goes against his virtuous persona he tries to convey to the audience, and is more of Kenny's overt tactics. What I'm trying to get at is that they are opposites in both their base persona and their subverted persona. So when one is subverting, they resemble the base persona of the other. This is actually a very genius form of character development, and it's in the form of a reality show. Isn't that really amazing? One of the funniest episodes in the series that drives home the contrast of Red and Blue Oni is the episode Who Can Imitate the Other Guy Better competition. This shows the way the other guy perceives the other. Kenny views Spenny as some shit-eating retard, but is only doing so to get Spenny to break character. Whereas Spenny legitimately believes he's playing Kenny straight and is shown to be an obnoxious cunt and only serves to insult himself, Spenny, in the process. It's a clash of Kenny's overt persona versus Spenny's covert persona, which is his real way of thinking. And that to me is fascinating because you can mix and match the four personas. A very plain example of their overt personas clashing can be seen in the episode Who Can Commit the Most Crimes. Spenny tries to break the law by doing them in a nice way, like shoplifting a fish, but then buying a tank to put them in a nice home. And Kenny, well, we get to see Kenny doing awesome stuff. He's actually breaking as many laws as he can get away with. The storytelling ability for these four personas, it makes it so that it's really limitless creativity.
I'm allergic to peanut.
This is completely ridiculous. What are you doing?
So we've talked about contrast, making for good exploration into characters and making the show interesting. So what happens when they meet in the middle? Is there a time when they both resemble each other in a neutral persona? Like, is there a time the Red and Blue Oni just have a straight up, we agree on this moment? Well, yes, actually. In the episode, Who Can 69 the Longest? Seriously. The two both admit they hate the idea of this competition and just want to avoid it at all cost. This kind of shows what happens if you have characters agree on something. It makes boring television. Believe me, it's a great way to highlight just the neutrality of it, since we have an entire series of contrasting personalities. But it's a bad episode compared to the rest. Contrast is what makes writing interesting. Thankfully, the crew just blasts them with a fire hose and the episode has some good laughs. These characters, actors, or reality show stars, whatever works for you, since honestly, I don't care if it's scripted. It's a really interesting textbook example of the Red Oni, Blue Oni trope and how it can be used for really good storytelling. Well, hopefully I've convinced you guys to give Kenny vs. Spenny a watch through. You can actually watch the whole series here on YouTube. The creator, Kenny Hotz, just wanted an easy place to promote the series, and hey, it's free, you can't beat that. I swear you'll laugh your ass off. I know this was a little different than what I normally do, but I am gearing my channel for more analysis type videos. And honestly, this is my favorite reality show. I'm not sure if I want to cover another reality show like I Love New York or Reality Fame Games. I'll most likely just be going back to animation. But I seriously think Kenny vs. Spenny does a really great job in exhibiting the Red Oni versus Blue Oni trope to a T. I could have gone over this trope with Goku and Vegeta or Naruto and Sasuke, you know, the usual trash, but those characters aren't that great for analysis since their series don't focus primarily on their relationship. Kenny vs. Spenny works because they're constantly at odds with one another. They have non-stop screen time, and that's what makes the show so interesting. Can Spenny go the distance, or will I even care? So thank you all for watching. Leave a comment on what else you'd like to see from this channel going forward. I do read all of them. And with that being said, have a good day.